A lot of people fall into the trap of going on a diet and they feel really good in the beginning, and as soon as they stop feeling good, they attribute it to everything but the diet because they remember how good they felt in the beginning of the diet. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I've done a book review for you guys, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing for you today. The book I'm going to be reviewing is going to be The Metabolic Typing Diet from William Wolcott. But before I start, you guys know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, ding ding ding. And if you don't want to watch the entire video, I will be including timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to the section that you want. Now, onto the topic at hand. About 10 years ago, for those of you who have been watching my channel, you know that I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And at the time that I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, I was introduced to Paul Chek. I ended up taking a lot of his courses, and in those courses, he would always recommend books to read. And one of the books that he ended up recommending was The Metabolic Typing Diet from William Wolcott. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the book, the basic premise is that you should eat the foods that your ancestors ate. So it's similar to the paleo diet in that regard. However, there are a few key differences, and I'm going to elaborate on some of those differences. One of the differences is instead of just eating the way we did 10,000 years ago, William Wolcott suggests that there are 3 different groups of people, and depending on which group you fall on, it will then dictate the type of diet that is going to be best for your body. The 3 different types of people that William Wolcott hypothesized exist were polar types, variable types, and equatorial types. Polar types are groups of people that grew close to the poles. So let's say you are somebody who grew very, very north. Let's say you were somebody from Denmark. Then you would be classified as a polar type. You also have equatorial types. Equatorial types are people who grew close to the equator. So if all your ancestors were Jamaican, then you would be classified as an equatorial type since that's where they grew up. And then if you are a variable type, that is a mixture between the polar and equatorial types. So let's say you had one parent who was Danish and one parent who was Jamaican. Well, because you have one parent who grew up north of the pole and one who was close to the equator, then you would be a variable type, and you could swap in and out between those 2 different types. Now, how exactly does that look? Well, if you are a polar, variable, or equatorial, Paul Chek, he ended up rebranding these as protein type, mixed type, and also carbohydrate type. So if you are a polar type, that means that you are a protein type. And a protein type is someone who should be consuming things like high purine proteins like organ meats and also fattier cuts of meat. So instead of something like boneless, skinless chicken breast, a polar type or a protein type would do better on something like chicken thighs or chicken drumsticks with the skin still on. Let's say you are an equatorial type or a carbohydrate type. Well, a carbohydrate type is going to do better on higher carbohydrate diet, and they're also going to do well on leaner cuts of meat. So instead of something like chicken thighs with the skin still on, they would do better on things like boneless, skinless chicken breast. And they would also do well on low purine foods. Now, if you are a variable type or a mixed type, those types of people will do better on things like a balance between high fat and high protein, and also low fat, low protein foods. And now that we know the 3 different types, how exactly does it work? Well, the main thing with regard to metabolic typing is there is a questionnaire that is involved. The way that the questionnaire works is there's a bunch of questions, and each one is going to be related to different conditions or different types of foods, and you are going to answer with how exactly a certain food makes you feel or what type of preference do you have. Some of the questions in the questionnaire will be something like, what are your favorite kinds of desserts? And then if you are a carbohydrate type, then you would answer something like cakes, cookies, fruits, generally foods that are high in sugars and carbohydrates. If you are a mixed type, then you wouldn't really have any preference for one or the other. You can pretty much have whatever you want. If you were a protein type, then you would prefer fattier desserts like cheesecake. Other types of questions would be something like, what would your ideal dinner consist of? For somebody who is a carbohydrate type, they might prefer something like boneless, skinless chicken breast with rice and maybe a salad on the side. For a mixed type, they will pretty much want to eat whatever is in front of them. They don't really have a preference either way. And for a protein type, you would prefer a heavier meal, something like a nice steak. And then there are other types of questions that relate to your mood. Some of the questions are, do you notice that certain foods make you feel more angry, more irritable, more anxious? And if you notice that protein foods make you feel more angry, irritable, or anxious, then you know that protein foods are not really good for you. If you notice that high carbohydrate foods, things like ice cream, cookies, those make you feel more anxious, irritable, or angry, then you know that you are more of a protein type. But that's basically how it works in terms of the questionnaire. Now, what exactly are some of the benefits and the drawbacks to this particular diet? Well, some of the benefits are it's going to make you listen to your body. One of the main problems with a lot of other diets is that they're telling you what to eat, but they're not really teaching you how to listen to your body. Whereas with the metabolic typing diet, even though it does have its drawbacks, it does teach you to listen to your body, because when you are going through the questionnaire, a lot of times what I find in my clinical practice is that people don't really know what foods make them feel a certain way. So by doing the questionnaire, it's going to force you to think, okay, when I have high protein foods or high fat foods, how exactly does that make me feel? Am I more anxious? Am I more satiated? Do I just feel my most energetic? If I have high carb meal, let's say I'm having something like a salad with some rice, does that give me more energy? Does that make me feel anxious? And it's going to teach you how exactly to listen to your body. So that is one of the benefits of the metabolic typing diet. It's more individualized than some of these other diets because it's actually teaching you to listen to your body, and it's not telling you that certain foods are bad or certain foods are good. It's just teaching you that you would generally do better on things like fattier cuts of meat or high protein foods or high carbohydrate rich foods, but it's not telling you these foods are good, these foods are bad. One of the other benefits is it does promote the consumption of whole foods. Unlike other diets where they will promote things like shakes or overemphasize the importance of supplements, with the metabolic typing diet, it does emphasize incorporating most of your diet from whole foods. So that is one of the huge benefits of the metabolic typing diet. And one of the other benefits is that it does recommend limiting your refined carbohydrates, and this is regardless of what type you are. Even if you are a carbohydrate type, it does place an emphasis on whole carbohydrates and not highly refined things. So things like heavily processed breads, things like sugars, all of those are not recommended even if you are a carbohydrate type. Now that we've gone through some of the benefits, what are some of the drawbacks to the metabolic typing diet? Well, one of the drawbacks is that there's no scientific evidence to support the fact that it does work. This one over here, this is kind of a moot point, because while there's no scientific evidence to support the fact that metabolic typing does work, there also is no scientific evidence to claim that it does not work. And in fact, there is a lot of anecdotal evidence with people in my own practice and other coaches that I have heard from that suggests that with a lot of people it does work. So the fact that there's no scientific evidence, it's technically a drawback, but also not at the same time, because everything at one point didn't have a scientific paper to prove whether or not it was valid. Before we had scientific papers, we just had to go off of anecdotal evidence. So there is that. One of the other drawbacks is that it is too subjective. I realize if you've been watching my videos for a long time, this may seem hypocritical because a lot of what I preach with regard to health is you should eat according to how you feel. And how exactly you feel, the foods that make you feel really good, that is a subjective measurement. There's nothing objective about determining what foods make you feel good. But one of the reasons why this is too subjective is because some of the questions can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're not really in tune with your body. I'm going to go back to the cheesecake question. One of the questions when determining whether you are a protein type or a carbohydrate type or a polar type or an equatorial type is what type of desserts do you prefer? Do you prefer things that are more sweet like candy, cookies, ice cream, or do you prefer things that are fattier and more rich, things like cheesecake? Well, let's say you are somebody who is taking this questionnaire and you are answering this questionnaire right after you came outside from the cold in the wintertime. Because it's really, really cold, you might answer that question that you prefer cheesecake just because it's really, really cold and you're not really feeling ice cream at the moment. And the opposite is true. Let's say you're taking this questionnaire in the summertime, it's 40 degrees outside, you are dripping sweat, you're boiling hot, you come inside, normally you would like cheesecake, but at the time that you take this questionnaire, you're seeing that question and you're thinking, you know what, right now it's really hot, I would prefer some ice cream. So there's a lot of subjectivity to it, and another problem with regard to the subjectivity is people will often answer the questions with regard to the foods that they like and not exactly the foods that make them feel a certain way. Most of the clients that I have given this questionnaire to in the past always came back as a variable type, so a mixed type, which is why I stopped giving this questionnaire to my clients about 7, 8 years ago, because I found that pretty much everybody was coming back variable type, so it was really ineffective to give them this type of questionnaire. If you are really in tune with your body, then there is going to be a little bit more accuracy with it, because if you know what foods are affecting your body, then you're going to be much better at answering this questionnaire truthfully and honestly. But that being said, just because metabolic typing is flawed, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because even though it's flawed, there are still some benefits to the metabolic typing diet. One of the things with regard to this is, if you want, what you can do is take the questionnaire and use that as your reference. That could be your starting point. So if you are a polar type or protein type, if you are a variable type or mixed type, or if you are an equatorial type or carbohydrate type, use that as your starting point. See how exactly you're feeling. Start to incorporate more whole foods into your diet. And if you find that the particular type that you were listed as is not giving you the effect that you want, then change up your type. You don't need to stick to one type for the rest of your life. You can also retest every few months. Every 3 months, retake the test, see exactly how you feel. Now, what if you don't want to take the test? What if you want to bypass that and just go straight into the experimentation phase? Well, this is what I encourage all my clients to do. I encourage all my clients to experiment on themselves and see what exactly works for them, because just because something works for me, it's not going to work for you. So just because I'm doing something like the carnivore diet, it doesn't mean that you can do it and you are going to feel just as good as I do. You may do well on a vegan diet, so you need to experiment for yourself. If you want to experiment, the way that you can experiment, each of these 3 different categories, you can basically break them down by protein type would be something like carnivore diet or a keto diet. Your mixed type would be something like a paleo diet or a Mediterranean diet. And then your carbohydrate type would be something like a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. With regard to these different diets, some of them are going to be more restrictive than the other. With regard to protein type, carnivore is going to be the most restrictive, and then keto is also going to be restrictive, but not quite as restrictive as the carnivore diet. Then with regard to the mixed type, you have the paleo diet, which is going to be more restrictive than the Mediterranean diet. And then with regard to the carbohydrate type, you have the vegan diet, which is going to be the most restrictive. And then vegetarian is going to be less so. So what you can do if you don't want to take the questionnaire is experiment with those 6 different types of diets. What you can do is 1 month of each. So do 1 month of carnivore, see how you feel, 1 month of keto, see how you feel, then do 1 month of paleo, 1 month of Mediterranean, 1 month of vegan, 1 month of vegetarian. After you've done 6 months, 1 month on each of them, then figure out which one made you feel your best. Whichever one made you feel your best, then that ideally should be the type of diet that you should be following. That being said, just because one particular diet makes you feel your best, that does not mean that it's going to make you feel your best for the rest of your life. You want to keep experimenting and you want to keep modifying your diet. So let's say you are doing either a vegan diet or any of these other types of diets and you feel amazing for 4 months. Then around the 4-month mark, you start to notice that it's no longer effective. Maybe your digestion is starting to slow down. Maybe you're experiencing issues with fatigue, mental clarity, all that type of stuff. Well, try out a different diet. Maybe you can do something like carnivore, go on the complete opposite end. Or if you don't want to go completely the opposite, what you can do is just go a little bit less restrictive and do something like vegetarian. In that case, what you would do is just incorporate a little bit more protein-rich foods. So things like eggs, cheeses, milk, and those types of foods, and see how those make you feel. If you notice that those give you really good energy and you feel really good, then keep doing that until you notice that it's no longer being effective for you. As soon as you notice that it is no longer being effective, don't be afraid to change your diet. A lot of people fall into the trap of going on a diet and they feel really good in the beginning, and as soon as they stop feeling good, they attribute it to everything but the diet because they remember how good they felt in the beginning of the diet. And you want to avoid this trap. If you are on a diet and you felt really good when you first started it and you're no longer finding that you're feeling good anymore, don't be afraid to modify it or completely get rid of it and swap it out for a completely different type of diet. And one of the things is you don't even need to do each of these 6 different diets for 1 month. You can do one at each meal. Your breakfast could be carnivore style, your lunch could be vegan, your dinner could be paleo. You could do 1 day carnivore, 1 day vegan, 1 day paleo. Go by how you feel. You don't want to be too strict with how exactly you are eating unless you find that being strict is making you feel really good. If you find that the strictness and regimented way that you are eating is giving you really good energy, good mental clarity, good focus, then go ahead and keep doing that. But don't be afraid to swap in and out of these different types of diets, and don't be afraid to change something if it's not working for you anymore. That's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. And if you have any other books that you would like me to review, go ahead, leave your suggestions down in the comments section, and I will review whichever ones get the most like. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.